So what is oil's impact on the US economy? Actually, what is oil's impact on the global economy? Well, Trump just laid out his economic plan, and oil is a huge part of it.
We will drill, baby, drill.
With all the controversy and hype around oil, whether it's good or bad, or whether it's clean or not clean, the one thing we've got to look at is, does it play a part in the global economy? Does it play a part in Trump's economy? That's the real thing we're going to talk about today. Now, make no two ways about it. We still live in a time where oil is part of everything. It is required to run most of our vehicles and equipment. It is found in all of our roads. It is found in almost everything we touch, including our cell phones and the cosmetics you use. But is oil a vital part of getting rid of or reducing the US deficit, which is out of control? What is oil's impact with our relationship with other countries, which right now seem to be somewhat fractured? We're going to talk about the history of oil, how it has played into the economy, how it has played into the US's success, and how it's going to play into the future. My name's Chris Naugle. This is What Now? What's next for oil? But before we talk about oil and how it's going to play a part in the economy, let's just talk about what's been in the news. Crowd strikes, okay? A big internet outage just happened and it shut airlines down. I had friends that were stuck at airports for 3 days. Why? Was it a glitch? Was it a cyber attack? Well, Fox News has a great article all about that. Global technology outage disrupts major airlines, 9/11 services, and businesses. But that's just some of the news. Let's carry on and talk a little bit about the education department and what they're doing. It's no secret anymore that a lot of people's student loans have been paid off, or there's been talk of them being paid off. Well, right over here, now that there's legal battles surrounding this administration's payoff of people's college debts, whether it's constitutional, unconstitutional, right over here in CNBC, the education department is pausing student loan payments for millions until they can figure this legal battle out. Now, I'm not going to go into that one because we're here to talk about oil, but that makes no sense. How many of you can agree? Comment below. Now, this was an interesting one, and it's right on topic with oil. So right here on the History Channel, there was an article, actually a program done about FDR, how in February of 1945, there was a wartime meeting with a Saudi king. And what happened during that meeting is still a bit fuzzy. There was something about refugees and placing refugees, but I think the conversation very quickly went to the future of oil. Now, whether or not this is the fact, I can tell you that there was something forged in that relationship between FDR and that Saudi king that lived many, many decades from that time. Actually, still lives today. And that is the relationship with the United States of America and the Middle East, or Saudis, in terms of oil. Now, that is being fragmented, but at least that relationship is what got us where we are. But that leads right into Nixon. Now, Nixon wasn't exactly a president that everybody thought was, woo, what a great one. But one of the things he did, love it or hate it, is he took us off the gold standard and put us on the petrodollar and basically solidified the US dollar being the sole currency that oil was valued in. Now, this happened in 1971, and the petrodollar is still today used, at least to today, which today is July 22nd, 2024. Things are happening really quick. Matter of fact, actually, let's put a pin in that. And just recently, one of the presidential candidates, Joe Biden, stepped out of the race. He just said, hey, I'm done. I'm not gonna run for president, which leaves this country a little bit confused. But anyway, let's keep moving on and talk about oil, and let's talk about inflation, because oil inflation, yeah, you've seen a lot in the last couple of years with inflation. You've also seen a lot with the pump. What do I mean by the pump? I mean gas. Gas has gone up tremendously from where it was. Now, Some people would say it's because this administration basically stopped trying to make the United States of America energy independent. Some would say it's just a general consensus that happens with inflation. I mean, as inflation has gone up, so too has the cost of oil. Some would say it's supply and demand. Some would say that the Saudis in the Middle East are basically starting to kind of say, hey, we don't like the US as much. We're going to give more oil to China, to India, to Russia. Listen, there's so much out there, I don't even know what's true or not. So we're not going to go down those rabbit holes, but this rabbit hole we are going to go down. Right here, check this chart out. The annual average gasoline price from 1918 to current. Well, let's just take a peek here. So if we were to look at this, and obviously this is adjusted for inflation as of April of 2022. So gas in 1918 was still $4.79 a gallon, adjusted for inflation. So where is it today? Well, I don't have it for today, but as of 2022, $3.77. So you can see if we average this sucker out, adjusted for inflation, gas prices haven't really changed a whole lot. Yeah, there's been ebbs and there's been flows, but it hasn't really changed. It's just what we see at the pump is all we know because we can't predict the future. But we certainly can look at the past, and that's what this chart does. But before we move past this chart, I would be remiss not to see that one period of time. That period of time from 2016 to 2020. I mean, just look at how inexpensive gas was, even adjusted for inflation, $2.07 a gallon. One of the lowest prices in this entire period of time. Now, who was running the country during that period of time? Well, Trump. That was the Trump era. And one of the things Trump was trying to do during that period of time is make, well, America great again, but he was trying to make America energy independent. Now, let's stop talking about Trump and oil and charts. Let's just talk facts. If you follow geopolitics and you look at the resources found right here in the United States of America, it could be argued that we have more oil than any other nation in the world, including the Middle East. Now, I don't have that to be factual, but in this book I read, The End of the World is Just the Beginning, great book about geopolitics, it talks about this heavily. And that guy does know more than I do. And he said the United States has the ability to dominate oil independence and dominate oil supply for the world because we have the resources, but we also have the demographics. We have the ability to ship our oil anywhere else. We are not landlocked. We do not have other countries that are going to try to take us over, well, at least not yet, take us over because of our oil. So because of that, could the United States be energy independent? The answer most of you should be saying is yes. And that is what the future might look like. So let's take this discussion to the present day relationship with oil. There's a whole bunch of information that I found that tells you the story. And let's start right here. How much oil is in the oil industry? So this is a unique article by The Guardian. Check this out. Revealed. Oil sector's staggering $3 billion a day profits for the last 50 years. Vast sums provide power to buy every politician and delay action on the climate crisis. Well, that's not such a good thing, but basically, check this out right here. The oil and gas industry has delivered $1 trillion in profits a year on average. That's insane. But that's also good when you look at it from a standpoint of can we dominate the oil industry? And if we do, what does that mean for our deficit? Can we knock the deficit down because of being oil independent? I don't know. But based on what you're seeing right here, that's a probability. Now, out of all the different articles I can show you, the one most important one is, do we have enough oil? Could we actually do this? But there's a couple factors. So you can't just look at oil as being, oh, we've got enough oil. You have to be able to refine the oil into the things that we need, and that's where we lack. In the United States of America, we don't have an oil production problem. We have an oil refining problem. You see, oil that comes out of the ground is called crude. Crude needs to be refined to be used to make the mouse, the phone, the fuel for your car, the fuel for everything. It's refining capacity that we lack, and that has been the difficulty for the United States of America. But check this article out right here, and this one's pretty interesting. The U.S. Energy Information Administration. So today in energy, United States produces more crude oil than any country ever. And I'm talking about 2023 data. I don't have 2024 yet. So look at that. The blue line that you're looking at represents the United States. The dark brown line represents Saudi Arabia, and the light brown represents Russia. So you can see those are three major countries that produce oil. But the United States in 2023 dominated. So even though we have been able to produce the most crude, the most oil, what countries are using the most amount of oil? Well, we found this little article right here, the countries with the biggest appetite for oil. So countries within the highest oil consumption in 2022 was the United States of America #1, China #2, India #3. No surprise there, right? But this one surprised me. Saudi Arabia has one of the biggest appetites. See, when we do these videos, we do a lot of research. And one of the things that I want to bring back up that we talked about at the beginning of this video is there enough oil in the United States of America to pay off our U.S. national deficit, our debt? Can the U.S. pay off its debt just on oil production? So now, although there's no way to really say whether or not that's possible, we kind of gave it a shot. So again, this is just our opinion. This is not factual. We were just running math based on some statistics we found. The current amount of estimated untapped oil, and the source was USGS, was 373.1 billion barrels, okay? So the current cost per barrel, the summer of 2024, was $84.37 a barrel. So if you did the math on that, that's a lot of numbers, but it's about $31 trillion. $31 trillion, and our US current debt is $34.92 trillion. So we come up a wee bit short. The other thing that doesn't factor in there is really cost. It doesn't factor whether or not we could refine it. There's a lot of missing things, but you can see, you're saying there's a chance.
So you're telling me there's a chance?
And I found this interesting. When you look at the current administration, the Biden administration, you know, they're all about green energy. Clearly, mandates for car manufacturers to produce EVs, that ain't working so well. All sorts of mandates for green energy, all of which we don't have a grid, an energy grid that can even support it. But nonetheless, the Biden administration during their time produced more oil than anyone else. I find that funny. So when you look at it, the largest producing administration of crude oil yet was the Biden administration. Green energy, highest production of oil. Green energy, highest production of oil. Green energy, selling our strategic reserves to reduce gas price, highest production of oil. I just can't make sense of it. I truly can't. And I'm trying not to beat up on the administration, but how can you be green and have all these initiatives and all these mandates, but yet still produce more oil? I don't know. I really don't. But one of you might have the answer, so comment below. And while you're at that whole commenting thing, why don't you click this little button, the subscribe button? There's a little bell up top. Smash that bell. You see, I've been working on that left hook, getting pretty darn good. Smash that left hook and so now we got to kind of really look at the pros and cons. You know, the pros and cons of oil. I mean, let's start with the cons. It's pretty easy. You know, our global dependence on oil, and oil is not exactly a clean thing. You know, extracting oil from the earth. I was recently out in Santa Barbara, California on a kayaking trip out where they used to drill tons of oil, and in the water you can still see that oil residue in there. And they had a big problem with that. So oil is not exactly clean, but it is necessary for us to live our lives the way we do. But forget about my opinion of the pros and cons and my little kayaking experience in Santa Barbara. Let's just come over here to the U.S. Energy Information Administration. So this article goes in and talks about all the different things from hydraulic fracking to oil spills to just drilling and how it disturbs land and marine ecosystems. But let's just hit some of the main things. Like I had mentioned, because we are so reliant on energy and on oil for that matter, for transportation, everything, we pollute the air. our vehicles, our tractors, our factories, not just what am I talking about? China and India are probably way worse, but nonetheless, burning oil or any type of oil is not good for the air. But not only that, there's oil spills, there's fracking, which disrupts the wild habitats and displaces animals and creates all sorts of issues like earthquakes, so they say. Global warming. Another thing they do is they blame fossil fuels for global warming. Now that is incredibly debated and controversial because the information is exaggerated on both sides of the fence. And I think the best way to say that is that old movie that Al Gore did. I believe the movie was called An Inconvenient Truth, which alarmed people. I remember being young, I'm like, oh my gosh, no more oil, because it was a huge threat, and it was all about global warming. So when you watch movies like that or see things about global warming and see it on the news, a lot of times you gotta understand it's designed to really get you to sway to believe a certain narrative. Now, I'm not saying that global warming isn't real by any stretch of the imagination. I'm not saying that it isn't a threat. I'm simply saying if you pay attention to the facts, things aren't what they seem. So with that being said, let's flip over and look at some of the pros. Since there's plenty of cons, we've heard about all of them, but let's talk about what are some of the pros to oil. So to go into the pros, what I thought I would do is just list a bunch of them down here. So if we were to become energy independent, the first thing I think that's obvious, it would create lots of jobs. US jobs, high-paying jobs. So the nation's jobs would go up, and someone has to operate and produce and deliver all that oil that we would produce, which creates even more jobs, not just here in the US, but globally. It's definitely an added security. Think about it. If we're not reliant on, well, we're not reliant on Russia, but we definitely were buying a lot of oil from them, but we certainly are reliant on the Middle East. But imagine if we weren't. That provides us a little bit more protection and security, does it not? And if we're exporting lots of oil and other people need our oil, well, that gives us a lot more security. It's called geopolitics. Look into it. And if oil and energy were in our control, and we sincerely were energy independent in this country, let's think about some of the things that would happen there. We wouldn't have to worry about sanctions from other countries. We wouldn't have to worry about oil and what the dollar valuing oil or other dollars or currencies valuing oil. If we controlled it, we control it. Just like the Middle East did, but that is what FDR protected back then, or at least forged a relationship that lasted all the way to the current times. The other thing too that's obviously factual, we saw this, is during the Trump administration, oil and gas was much lower. So it was cheaper for people and families to travel. And this one I think is one of the most important ones. If we have more oil, that means we can export more oil. And if we export more oil, that means more money back to the United States of America. Hence, remember we're talking about, can this pay off the deficit? Don't know, but in theory, sounds like you're saying there's a chance. And trade negotiation powers. So what industries would be affected by this? Let's look at that. So airlines, greatly affected by the cost and the price of fuel. How about oil rigs and the companies that provide services to those oil rigs? Well, that for sure. How about gas pumps? How many people do you know that own those little gas stations? Yeah, they are greatly affected by the price of oil. But not only that, industrial companies, just about every single company in the United States runs on oil. In one way or the other, the products and goods they sell, to run the energy they need to make the products and goods they sell, to deliver the products and goods that they make or sell. Think about it. Everything hinges on oil today. But here's another thing that many of you might have already forgotten about. It was called the Keystone Pipeline. It was a pretty important thing back in the day. But right here in this article in 2023, they're calling it the worst kept secret about the Keystone XL pipeline. It canceled thousands of domestic jobs. Thousands of domestic jobs. We need those jobs back. We really need those jobs back. And those jobs weren't working at McDonald's or working at any of the fast food restaurants where it's barely paying minimum wage. These were high-paying jobs that provided really good lifestyles for the Americans that were working there. And I like this, and it's highlighted right here. If the president had not canceled the Keystone Pipeline XL, the pipeline would have created a positive economic impact of $3.6 to $9.6 billion. What's more, the administration finally admitted that the president killed between 16,000 and 59,000 jobs with the stroke of a pen. I don't really even know what to say to that. So in conclusion, I don't really know what your thoughts are. I'd love you to tell me your thoughts in the comments, good, bad, or indifferent. Believe me, I get plenty of hate, so bring it on. And everybody's entitled to their own opinion, as I am. And I'm just telling you my opinion with a little bit of sprinkle of facts from these articles. But is Trump onto something? If he were to go energy independent with the United States of America during his next term, if he wins, that is, could that make a difference? Could he actually pay the deficit down or off? Could the United States be in a better place because of oil? That's a really bold question, but a really important one. I want you to just real quick take your eyes off of Trump and Biden and politics. I actually want you to think about Dubai. You ever seen the photos of Dubai? It almost doesn't even look real. It's just this wonderland, right? Tallest buildings in the world, islands that were literally made. They even have shapes, beautiful waterways. Everybody there seems like they're millionaires and billionaires. The Saudi prince, they don't even know his net worth. It's so absurd. How is all of that funded? Let me ask you, is it because they tax the heck out of their citizens that live in Saudi Arabia and Dubai? No. Matter of fact, if I'm not mistaken, and you guys can fact check me, if I'm not mistaken, if you live in Dubai and you're an actual citizen, you get a check. What is all that because of? Go ahead, take your time. What do you think that's because of? It's not taxes, we know that. Why is it that everything over there just seems nicer? Even their airline. Oh, did you say oil? Oh yeah, 100% of everything that you see over there is funded by oil. And I could make the argument that we have more oil here in the United States of America than they have over there. So where's the disconnect? Folks, I urge you to really think about this. Whether or not you think oil is good or bad, dirty or clean, it doesn't matter. I just want you to think about the economic impact of the United States of America being energy independent. With that being said, thanks for joining me for another episode of What Now? What's next for oil? Folks, if you like this video, you're going to want to check this one out. It's called 2025, a look back. Enjoy.